Hello my beautiful friends and welcome back to our channel. My name is Beck. I'm a professional mindset coach, a medical doctor, and the founder of the group coaching membership, Dare Darling. Dare Darling is currently a group of consultant doctors. I invited in successful women to come and retrain themselves to be more self-governing in their lives, which is particularly important for very successful people, for overachievers, because we have normally lived a life that is filled with praise and following expectations, not necessarily because we just wanted to please other people, but because by definition of being what somebody would call a successful person, we have received praise and met expectations across our lives. And so our lives today, our day-to-day lives today, can still be hijacked by this sense of obligation, what we should do, and by this need we've developed, by this thing we've normalized of receiving external validation to say, tick, yes, we're doing it right, we're on track. So Dare Darling is for successful women to start to rewrite those rules of what's good and what's worthwhile for them in their life, and so that they can be the ones who are really ruling their lives today. Because in a world that very loudly and sometimes quite insidiously wants you to be nice, normal, convenient, obedient, and not rock the boat, it is a daring thing to be yourself. It's a daring thing to choose what you want in your life for yourself. Now in today's video, I want to highlight for you, bring to your attention, the cost of not speaking up. The cost of not giving your opinion or making a request, pointing something out, contributing something in a professional or personal situation. So this could be any situation from where you're at work, you're having a discussion with your respected colleagues, or you're in a meeting reviewing patient cases or morbidity and mortality, some kind of intellectual discussion, and you have something that you want to add, or you have a question that you want to ask, and out of fear, you decide not to. You decide it's safer if I say nothing. I'm not really sure how this is going to go. I'm not really sure if this is going to go the way I want it to go, so I'm going to say nothing. Anything from that to, another social situation where perhaps maybe you want to compliment somebody, or maybe you see someone behaving poorly. Maybe somebody not treating somebody in a way that you think is kind or acceptable or up to standard. And let's even make it a little bit more nuanced and say, well, you're not quite clear that it's sure at the time that they were being insulting or dismissive or inappropriate, but there's just kind of question in your mind. There's this tinge, there's this concern that maybe that joke did have negative consequences, or it was poorly intended, for example. But again, out of fear that maybe you'll look like you're no fun, or you're thinking the worst of that person, you don't speak up. Or with the compliment, you don't speak up and give the compliment because you fear that the person will think that you're too much or a bit weird or had a different negative intention for the compliment. The key here is that you're not showing up in the world in the full expression of yourself, contributing what you want to contribute, or acting within your integrity out of fear. Because here are the consequences of that. Because the insidious part of this problem, and why this problem can be self-perpetuating, is with that fear, it can look like immediately you possibly avoided something very bad by not speaking up. And the consequence, on the flip side, of you not speaking up can easily be dismissed away because it's very intangible. Usually it's this low-level grumbling distress, this rumination, this regret about not speaking up, or this constant questioning of yourself that follows you for the rest of that day, or to bed that night, or wakes you up in the night. But then eventually, over the next couple of days, it kind of dissipates away. It becomes lesser and lesser, unless that situation is brought back to your mind, which it commonly isn't. But I want to draw your attention to the bigger consequence of you not speaking up here, even though to me, that kind of distress and that comes from the rumination, regret, and the interruptions of your life with that is significant. There is a bigger, more compelling consequence here that I want to bring your attention to. And that is you breaking your trust with yourself. When I coach my clients, self-trust is always my number one priority. In the way that we coach, I always want to be directing my clients to building a more trusting relationship with themselves. I want them to build a new self-concept through the coaching work that they do, a new relationship with themselves where they're no longer afraid of themselves. They're no longer afraid to look at their mind and what is in their mind, and they're not afraid for life to happen and for things to go wrong or for people to not like them, because they have a trusting relationship with themselves. They know that when those things happen, those undesired outcomes happen, they will take care of themselves. They won't hide from themselves. They won't shame themselves. They won't self-sabotage. They won't treat themselves poorly. And this is true resilience in my eyes. When things can go wrong, yet you know that you have your own back. You can feel safe with yourself when the undesired things happen. But when we don't show up for ourselves in this way, speaking up and either contributing the valuable things that we have to offer to the world as a part of something that's important to us, most of us highly value being somebody that contributes and adds value to the world. Or if we demonstrate to ourselves time and time again, even in little situations, that we won't honor ourselves, we won't do what we want to do or what we think is right, because we fawn to the fear that comes up in our mind, we're breaking our trust with ourselves. You know, imagine if you had a friend and you had these agreed values and you said, you know, I see the value in you, my friend. And if we're in a professional conversation, I'm going to ask you to speak, right? Because I want you to contribute. Or you had a friend and you're in that social situation where somebody made a joke towards your friend that you thought had a little bit of an off tinge, or that maybe was hurtful or harmful to them. And you didn't speak up for your friend, but you'd agreed and you talked about all the time that this is the stuff that's important to you and these are the values that you stand for. How would you feel towards that friend who had spoken their values and declared that this is what's important to them, and yet they were then not executing on those values? They weren't walking the talk. You would start to feel a breakdown of trust in that relationship. And I want you to realize that that's what you're doing to yourself too. When you don't act in a way that's aligned with what's important to you, in particular out of fear, you start to lose your ability to trust yourself. You stop believing that you'll have your own back when it's hard. You'll start believing that, well, yeah, in the best case scenario, when it's easy, I'll be in my values. But whenever there's any tinge of fear or maybe something not going right, I'll abandon myself. It's very easy to see in a relationship with somebody else, but it's not as easy to see in a relationship with yourself. And that's exactly why I want to bring it to your attention. The rumination that you have after these situations when you didn't show up the way you wanted to show up, professionally or personally, that matters. The guilt that you feel, the resentment that you feel for yourself, that matters. The regret that you feel matters too. It's not necessarily nothing. It might be something very worthwhile listening to. And from this video, what I'd really like for you to do is start to question if you're really perceiving the payoff and the consequences of not speaking up truly an incompleteness. Because in my experience as somebody who has decided and committed to and is showing up in speaking up more and having less and less situations where I have to regret not saying something, my experience is that I was overemphasizing the fears. The fears that I had when I actually looked at them weren't actually something that I needed to be so afraid of. And on the other hand, I was underemphasizing the consequences. I wasn't getting crystal clear on actually just how much, for someone like me, it did affect me. And it did affect my relationship with myself. It did affect my self-concept. It did affect how proud I was of myself and how I thought about my life when I didn't speak up. That was actually very significant to me. It's a part of me living authentically and being somebody who has my own back, being somebody who shows up for myself, and that is what builds my confidence in life. So my beautiful friends, have a look in your mind. Have a look at how you're perceiving the world, how you're thinking about your fears, and how you're thinking about what you have to gain as well from making different choices in your life. When you spend a bit of time looking at your reasons, looking at your values, looking at what's important to you, things not only become so much clearer, but you start to create this natural motivation to do the things that you want to do, that propels you to way more easily do things that otherwise would feel quite hard. And suddenly things that feel daring or felt daring to you before are just normal day-to-day things that you do, because you have the emotions, the conviction, the confidence, the boldness to drive those daring behaviors. All right, my beautiful friends, I hope this one prompted perhaps a different way of you looking at your life and making decisions. Let me know if it was helpful, if you want to see more videos like this, and I will see you guys in my next one.